G'day! In this lesson we will build the book-to-author relationship feature. We have created book and author functionalities for the bookstore application. However, currently there's no relationship between these entities. In this lesson we will first establish a one-to-many relationship between the author and the book entities. Let's open the book/book.cs in the domain project and add the following property to the book. In this lesson, we preferred not to add a navigation property to the author entity from the book class, like public author. This is due to the fact that we want to follow the DDD practices. However, you can add such a navigation property and configure it using EF-core. If we do this, we don't need to write join queries while getting books with their authors, which makes our application code simpler. Let's add a new required author ID property to the book entity. But what about the existing books on the database? They currently don't have author IDs, and this will be a problem when we try and run the application. This is a typical migration problem, and the decision depends on your case. If you haven't published your application to production yet, you can just delete existing books in your database, or you can delete the entire database in your development environment. You can update the existing data programmatically on the data migration or seed phase, or you can manually handle it on the database. We'll prefer to delete the database. You can run the drop database in the Package Manager console, since this is just an example project and data loss is not important. Since this topic is not related to ABP framework, we won't go deeper for all these scenarios, but we will save it for another course. Let's open Bookstore DB Context Model Creating Extensions class under the Entity Framework Core folder of the acme.bookstore.entityFramework Core project, and change the builder.entity of book part and add the mapping for the relationship like this. We can now just run the following command in the PMC to add a new database migration. Add -migration with the label added author ID to book. Ensure that acme.bookstore.entityFrameworkCore.migrations is the default project and the acme.bookstore.dbmigrator is the startup project as always. This should create a new migration class with code in its up method. We can see that code adds a author ID field to the app books table, creates an index on the author ID field, and declares a foreign key to the app authors table. We will change the data seeder to add authors related to books and modify the application layer. Since the author ID is a required property of the book entity, current data seeder code will not work. Let's open the bookstore data seeder contributor in the acme.bookstore.domain project and change it with the following code. The only change is that we set the author ID properties of the book entity. We will run the drop database command in the PMC so that we can seed the data with the authors to book relationship. Let's now run the .db migrator console application to migrate the database schema and seed the initial data. We will now change the book app service to support the author relationship. Let's begin by modifying the DTOs to incorporate the authors. First, we will modify the book DTO in the books folder of the acme.bookstore.application.contracts project. We will add the following two properties, namely being author ID and author name. Next, we will open the create update book DTO class in the books folder of the acme.bookstore.application.contracts project and add an author ID property. We will now create the author lookup DTO Inside the Books folder of the acme.bookstore.application.contracts project, we will replace the contents of that file with the following code. The author lookup DTO will be used in a new method that will be added to the iBook app service. We will open the iBook app service interface in the Books folder of the application.contracts project and add a new method named getAuthorLookupAsync using the following code. This new method will be used from the UI to get a list of authors and fill a drop-down list to select the author of a book. We will now open the Book app service in the Books folder of the application project and replace the contents of the file with the following code. Let's see the changes we've made. We added authorize bookstore permissions books.default to authorize the methods we have newly added / overridden. Remember, authorize attribute is valid for all the methods of the class when it is declared for a class itself. We've also injected the iAuthor repository to query the authors. Overridden the getSync method of the base CRUD app service, which returns a single book DTO object with the given ID. We've also used simple link expression to join books and authors and query them together for the given book ID. Used async executor dot first or default async to execute the query and get a result. Async executor was previously used in the author app service. We've also added throws an entity not found exception, which results in a HTTP 404 not found result if requested book was not present in the database. Finally, we've created a book DTO object using the object mapper, then assigning the author name manually. We've also overridden the getListAsync method of the base CRUD app service, which returns a list of books. The logic is similar to the previous method, so we can easily understand the code. We've also created a new getAuthorLookupAsync. This simply gets all the authors. The UI uses this method to fill a drop-down list and select an author while creating and editing books. Since we have introduced the author lookup DTO class and used object mapping inside the getAuthorLookupAsync method, we need to add a new mapping definition inside the bookstore application automator profile in the application project. We have to add create map author to author lookup DTO. We will modify the unit tests for the authors and make changes to the user interface. Some of the unit tests will fail since we have made some changes on the author app service. Let's open the book app service _tests in the books folder of the application.tests project and change the contents with the following code. We have changed the assertion condition in the should get list of books from b lambda b.name equals 1984 to b lambda b.name equals 1984 and b.authorname equals George Orwell to check if author name was filled. We've also changed the should create a valid book method to set the author ID while creating a new book, since it is a required field and we need to have a valid author associated with a book. The book list page changes are trivial. We'll open up the pages/books/index.js in the acme.bookstore.web project and add the following column definitions between the name and type columns. Let's run the application. We should be able to see the author column on the table. We will now open up the pages/books/create modal.cs HTML.cs in the web project and change the file contents with the following code. We've changed the type of the book property from createUpdateBookDTO to the new createBookViewModel class defined in this file. The main motivation of this change is to customize the model class based on the user interface. We didn't want to use UI-related select items of name of authors and display name author attributes inside the createUpdateBookDTO class. We also added authors property that is filled inside the onGetAsync method using the iBookAppService.getAuthorSLookUpAsync method, which we defined before. The last change we have made is to the onPostAsync method to map createBookViewModel object to a createUpdateBookDTO object, since iBookAppService.createAsync accepts the parameter of this type. We'll now modify the edit modal. Let's open the pages/books/editmodal.cs HTML file.cs in the acme.bookstore.web project and change the file contents with the following code. We have changed the type of book property and created UpdateBookDTO to new editBookViewModel class defined in this file, just like done before for the create modal above. We've moved the ID property inside the new editBookViewModel class. We've also added authors property that is filled inside the onGetAsync method using the iBookAppService.getAuthorLookUpAsync method. We've also changed the onPostAsync method to make editBookViewModel object to a createUpdateBookDTO object, since iBookAppService.updateAsync accepts the parameter of this type. These changes require a small change in the editmodal.cs HTML. We'll remove the ABP-input ASP4ID tag since we no longer need it, since we've moved this into the editBookViewModel. Finally, the changes above require us to define some object-to-object mappings. We'll open the Bookstore Web AutoMapper Profile.cs in the web project and add the following mapping definitions inside the constructor. We can now run the application and try to create a new book or update an existing book. We'll see a drop-down list on the create/update form to select the author of the book. This was the last lesson in the course. We now have a bookstore web application developed using the power of the ABP framework. Thanks for watching.